All right, so first things first, if you could give a rundown of who you are, where you're from, parents and siblings' names, anything of that sort.
Okay.
Just to give a brief introduction of yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Helen Burke Lynch. My maiden name is McCready. That's spelled MCCREADY. And I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers. Right now I live in Illinois, Belvedere, Illinois, because my husband took a job with the local company, Sunstrand. But my husband is also Irish Catholic. His name is Leo A. Lynch, and we both come from the city of Lowell, Massachusetts. We grew up in the same city, but we didn't know each other until we were in our very late teens, early 20s.
Okay.
Do you want me to talk about my sibling? I mean,
Sure, yeah.
Sisters and brothers.
For sure.
Is it
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. I'll edit it later to make sure we don't have dead time.
I grew up in a house of 5 children. I have 2 sisters, and we were all born within 2.5 years, so we were like triplets almost. And then later on, we had 2 brothers. They were like baby brothers, and both of them are alive today. They live in Massachusetts. I've lost one sister, my oldest sister, but my other sister lives in Merrimack, New Hampshire. And we have always gone back to Massachusetts and New England for vacations and to visit family, and that's been about what our vacations were. My mother was an American, born in America, but her father and her mother both came from Ireland as immigrants, and she told me that they came over on a boat in steerage, which is, I think they had animals down there in the bottom of the boat, but they were able to put a lot of the Irish people down there, and that's how they came. My mother has 2 brothers and a sister, but she said that her mother lost 4 little girls. In those days, there were a lot of deaths because, of course, they didn't have antibiotics or anything like that. And these little girls were close to newborns. Only one of them was 2 years old when she died from some illness. My father's parents also came over from Ireland, and he had 4 sisters and 1 brother. So there were 6 in his family. There were, and let's see, I guess most of his relatives now have died. His mother and father came from Belfast. Belfast is in Northern Ireland.
When you were younger, and this could be very what's the word I'm thinking of? Broad. It could be very broad.
Broad, that's a good word.
When you were younger, what traditions would you celebrate with your family?
Well, when I was growing up, we lived in a neighborhood with mostly Irish Catholics.
Okay.
It just happened to be a place where they settled. However, there was also a Greek settlement there too. And I had lots of friends who were Greek. They could speak Greek, but of course they were Americanized too. Mm-hmm. But their parents came over from Greece. But as far as our family and the Irish, we had St. Patrick's Church was St. Patrick's Parish, and they had a St. Patrick's School. And St. Patrick's Church, I would say, was like the center of our lives. Every single Sunday, everybody got dressed up, and they went to church. They got dressed up to go to church. And every Saturday, my two sisters and I went to confession, because all the school kids, used to go every Saturday to confession, and then would receive communion on Sunday. And Sunday was kind of a special day. Oftentimes we would go to our grandmother's. It was my grandmother on my mother's side, and they would always have either corned beef and cabbage dinner, or it would be ham and cabbage. It was delicious. Now my grandmother's name was Mary Jordan, and she married Martin Burke. These are the two parents of my mother who came over in steerage. They had my aunt, well, I already told you, they had my Aunt Christina, my Uncle Marty, who's Martin, and my other Uncle Thomas. That's my mother's two brothers and sister. My grandmother, Mary Jordan, married Martin Joseph Burke, B-U-R-K-E. And Martin Joseph had some brothers here in the United States. One of them was Timothy, and I can't recall the other one. Actually, for immigrants, my grandmother Burke, it was running a little variety store right down in the neighborhood. She was like a little businesswoman, and she had I remember that little store. I used to go there when I was a kid with my mother, and she just my mother said she let a lot of people put their groceries on hold. I mean, because they couldn't pay. But she was really good. But she ran the business well. My grandfather worked in the mill in Lowell, where we came from. It was noted for its mills, because we had the Merrimack River going right by in the city of Lowell, and it had falls, the Merrimack Falls. And the falls were used to create some kind of electricity. So we had several mills, and most of them were cotton mills. Before the cotton industry went south, Lowell, Massachusetts was the cotton center, really. Now to get back to Martin and Mary, when Mary came over, Mary Jordan, she came over also with her sister. Her sister's name was Delia Jordan. And Delia Jordan married Michael Burke. That was the other brother. That was a brother of Martin. So two sisters married two brothers. And they lived in Lowell also. Delia was a very, very smart lady, and she bought herself a house with her husband, and she could play the piano. My mother was very close to her, loved her. But Mike died at an early age of some kind of heart congestion. And shortly thereafter, Delia died. They used to say she died of a broken heart, but I don't know exactly what she died from. But it was a shame, because my mother was young. My mother married young with my father. Don't know if I told about my father and mother. My mother and father got married young, and right away they had the three girls, three girls right in a row. And my father was an artist, and he actually went to school for it. He, you wonder how can you make a living being an artist? But he also did lettering, and there was a large oil company in Lowell called Gage, G-A-G-E, and they had trucks all over the city, and they had these huge letters, Gage, across the trucks, you know. Well, my father used to be the one to put those letters on. They would paint them. They didn't stick them on like they do today, you know.
Yeah.
So he did all of that, and he did some interior painting for restaurants. He'd do a mural on the wall. He also became the manager in one of the outstanding men's department stores in Lowell. It was called Dickerman and McQuaid's, and he did all the displays in the windows. Not only did he, dress the mannequins, they were usually just men's busts. They weren't full. But he did all the lettering on the price tags and all that, and the decorations. And my father was very well known and very well liked. My mother was always a stay-home mother until World War II began.
So from a Catholic standpoint, which relative or family member had the most impact on you from that standpoint?
I would say my mother and father. But, of course, my mother and father were impacted by their parents, who were very Irish and very Catholic. And, it just, in the whole neighborhood, when something was going on, it was going on in the church. Yeah. We had Holy Communion, we had baptism, and for the babies. And then Holy Communion was a very big day, important day for all of us. And then we had confirmation after that, which was also a very big day. Baptism, in those days, the father used to take the baby to be baptized in the church because they would keep the mother. The mother would have like 5 or 6, I don't know how many days in the hospital. Today they're out in one day, but in those days, So the mother was supposed to stay at home, and she did. And the father would take the baby to church and have her baptized. My mother's name was Helen, and she said when her father took her to church to be baptized, he wanted her to be named Ellen because his mother's name was Ellen. But he had the Irish brogue, and so when he said to the priest, I want her to be called Helen, the priest thought he said Helen. And so she got Helen, and my mother said she never liked her name. Well, I was the third daughter. My sister Betty was Elizabeth Delia, and my sister Jerry was Mary Geraldine. It was always a Mary in the Catholic family. It was always a Mary. And my mother did not want me to be called Helen, but my father, this is the story I got, maybe this is too drawn out, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, my father insisted that one of these daughters have to be named after her. So she said no, she had another name in mind, but anyway, he came home and said, this is Helen Burke McCready. So she said, well, we're going to call her Burke. She won't like Helen. Mm-hmm. So that's my name. Yes. But you asked me what was the most influence in the Catholic Church or what? Well, we just had, this was our life, We went to catechism every Sunday. My 2 sisters and me would go to 8:30 Mass. They had a children's Mass downstairs, and the adults were upstairs, and the nuns were downstairs with the kids. And then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they had catechism. So we'd go home and we'd have dinner. We had a big dinner at noon. And then we'd go to catechism was at 3:00. And then usually my mother and father would let us go to the movies. Movies were 10 cents a ticket to get in. And so we would go to the movies. We'd see Shirley Temple or something like that.
Sure.
And that was a big deal. On Saturdays when we'd come home from confessions, the joy was that we were able to stop at the bakery, the local bakery, and bring home cupcakes, or we could go next door and get an apple pie that was freshly made. Oh, this woman made pies like that. So that was kind of a treat on Saturdays. Saturdays, for some reason, we always had brown beans, and brown bread, and we'd have either hot dogs or hamburgers. It just seemed to be a tradition. We did that every Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't know if that came from Ireland or not, but every Sunday we had, the corned beef and cabbage, potatoes and carrots. It was great. So, that was that was a tradition that we just kept doing over and over.
As I guess having prior knowledge for you being my grandmother, can your love for music be affiliated with your faith or heritage?
Now, what was that again?
Could your love for music
Yeah.
be affiliated with your faith or heritage?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, when we were kids growing up, the church always had, once a year they had a big musical, and it was on St. Patrick's Day. And the whole place was filled. Excuse me.
No worries.
We have a St. Patrick's Day minstrel show, and all the Irish tunes were there. Did Your Mother Come from Ireland? Oh, Danny Boy, I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, all those Irish songs. It was wonderful. Also, we were very spiritual in our family, and mainly because, on Sunday when we'd go to Sunday school, they'd be taught by nuns.
Yeah.
And the nuns were pretty. I mean, we didn't have any ugly nuns, but there were some, but we just didn't mind going at all. And there was one nun, she was so lovely. Her name was Sister Winifred. And I know my sister Betty took Winifred for a confirmation name because of that sister. She loved that sister. Of course, I have an Aunt Winnie anyway. But yes, that was a given. And a lot of the people that were in St. Patrick's Church were from Ireland. We called it the Old Country. And so they had brogues, and sometimes the priest would be Irish. We had a Father Luddy. I don't know that that's an Irish name, but he was great. And then I was also, as a kid, I was in the choir.
Yeah.
And of course, we joined the Sodality. That was, the girls' club. So we sang, and I think I loved music. I loved that music in the choir, which we sang every Sunday. But then when we went to high school, my sisters and I joined the chorus. So we learned how to read music and sing, and we had a piano at home, and we played the piano. We didn't take lessons, but we knew how to read music, and we could play the tunes,
Yeah.
So at one point, my two sisters and I used to sing at home the songs that we would sing in the chorus in high school, to the point where we were harmonizing. So we started. My mother got us taking lessons for harmonizing, and the three of us, one St. Patrick's show, they asked us to sing, and the three of us, had these green velvet gowns made, and we sang Danny Boy in harmonies. So that was our big deal, that was our, and my mother, of course, was in the audience, and she had roses sent up to us, it was such a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really right around the church that we went to the movies, but it wasn't the big deal, you know? What else did you ask me? My faith, that's how music, we used to tap dance. You know, tap dancing was done over in Ireland. I don't know if you've seen any Irish tap dances sometimes. Well, and we really didn't take serious tap dance lessons, but we tap danced anyway, you know.
Sure.
So whenever we get new shoes, we would get in the corner of the kitchen and tap dance, you know. It was kind of an Irish thing. And speaking of the church one more time, at Easter time, well, that was a very big deal. During Lent, we used to give up something. We give up candy. And as we got older into high school, we would go to church in the morning before we went to school. There was a church downtown right near the school. And, you know, we thought it was great. You know, we just enjoyed it. And then, but on Easter, everybody showed up with new clothes. I mean, I say everybody, really everybody did. They had something new on. At least it looked that way. Mm-hmm. And we had new hats, and we'd get new shoes, and probably a new coat, you know, a little jacket or something. And you'd always go to communion on Easter Sunday. That was a big deal.
Do you have a favorite prayer, and why?
A prayer?
Favorite prayer?
Oh, well, I do the rosary. You know, every day I do a rosary. Okay. And when I was a girl, my sister Jerry and I, we had twin beds, and we used to say a rosary novena every single night. We'd be falling asleep and not saying it, you know. But a lot of it was, you know, I don't know if you want to put this in or not, but my father had a drinking problem. Okay. He was sober for a long time, and that's when we had our little baby brothers, and everything was wonderful. But he had an alcohol problem that if he took one drink, he like, it was his system or whatever. I don't know if you know about alcohol or not, but it you know, people call it a disease. Some people say, no, it's not a disease, but it really is. But anyway, and I think that's what caused us to start saying the novenas, to help Dad stop his drinking and get it under control. Yeah. But of course, that stayed with me. It made a big impression on me. I was very spiritual, we all were. And that was very important. So today I say the rosary too. My favorite prayer, I was very devoted to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And my husband Leo was very devoted to her too. And when we were dating, we used to go on Sunday to church together. And my husband Leo has a little metal Blessed Virgin Mary that he said his grandmother gave to him, and he used to carry it with him wherever he went, even on his work traveling. You know, yeah. I still have it. But yeah, he was devoted to her too.
So, since you've moved quite a bit throughout the years in the country, along with my parents or my mom, are there any places in the country that you find more religious than others?
More religious than others?
Yeah. And, like, could you share your experiences with that?
Well, of course, Massachusetts, even Boston, they're loaded with Irish Catholics. At least they used to be. Mm-hmm. And even in Chicago, there are so many churches. I want to take a tour. I've wanted to for quite a while. I'm just going to make sure I get it. They have some beautiful old churches, Catholic churches in Chicago. Mm-hmm. However, when my husband, when Leo had a job in Virginia, Waynesboro, Virginia. He loved going there, and I did too. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. It's it's only about, I think, 3 hours from Washington D.C. But it has the Shenandoah Valley, which is beautiful. But those people down there mostly were not Catholic, and when we moved in, everybody was friendly, but my boys told me that when they were in school, some of the boys would call them Yankees. Danny and Leo, they'd say, "You Yankees," They were still the old tradition of the North versus the South, and that was interesting. There was a local church there, a Catholic church, and our kids went to that school, and we went to the church, and we had friends from the church who were Catholic, thank goodness. But I think we were a minority, and that was very noticeable. Yeah, very noticeable in those days. Well, we visited holy places in Europe. There's the Lourdes, Lordes. There's the Blessed Virgin of Lourdes. Do you know that? I was going to say tale, legend.
Don't think so.
Okay.
Could you explain that?
There was a young girl named Saint Bernadette. She's now Saint Bernadette. She saw an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and she told her mother and father about it, and they said, "Oh, nobody." To make a long story short, she kept going to this place, and she would see the Blessed Virgin Mary, and the Blessed Virgin told her to do things like say these prayers and so on and so forth. The priest did not believe her. Nobody believed her until he said, "Ask her what her name is." And so she said her name. She told me her name is the Immaculate Conception. Well, that was the first time anybody had heard of the Immaculate Conception. And Bernadette was a young girl. She didn't make it up. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the breakthroughs. But in the end, there's a huge shrine there today. And there was no water there until the Virgin told Bernadette to dig until she gets some water. Anyway, a spring sprung up, and it's there today. People come, and if they're crippled or something, they put the water on themselves. There's been some miracles, I've been told, over the years. This has been years. But today they still go in crowds. And St. Bernadette is very well known in the Catholic Church, There's a church named St. Bernadette's here in town. So let's see, what got me onto that? The sacred places?
Just unlike your experiences.
Yeah, well, there's a Mary of Knock, Knock. That's the name of a city in Ireland. And there's a big shrine to her there. And Leo and I have been there too. The place is beautiful. And there are other places I haven't been to that a lot of people have. So there's a lot of devotion today to the Blessed Virgin Mary. She's known as, even in Russia, Russia was very Christian for a long time, and they have a devotion even today to Our Lady of Vladimir. Vladimir is the name of a city in Russia, and she was one of my favorite icons. Anyway, she's still devoted over there, but for a long time it was all shut down. Mm-hmm. For 40 years, nobody could go to church or anything over in Russia. And that's another story.
Are there any places that you would like to visit?
That I'd like to visit?
Yeah.
Well, I've been to the Holy Land. I would love to go back, but I can't go now. Not now. It's all in shreds. And it just breaks my heart. I wouldn't mind going back again. We saw the Dome of the Rock. We saw the wall, where the Jewish people would put their prayers. What do they call it, the West Wall? Anyway, there's a wall. You've got to go and see the Jerusalem, where the rabbis used to come and they'd stick their little pieces of paper in the wall, for prayers or whatever. Mm. It's still there. That wall is still there. You gotta go and see that sometime. It's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of Jewish artifacts and everything. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I wouldn't mind going back.
How has religion molded you into the person that you are today?
Oh, so this is really basically about religion?
A little both.
Well, when you are taught religion as a little person, a little girl, you take it because your parents have taught you, they believe, and you believe. And then when you get to a certain point, you start saying, gee, I wonder how come that is, You start asking questions, and you wonder why somebody else has a different religion from you. And maybe their religion is true and your religion is not, that happens. And so, and of course it happened with me, but not so much in a serious way, but in a way that I was attracted to taking classes on religion. The very first one I took, we lived in Erie, and my kids were little babies, and Leo was home minding, and I said, you know what? There's a class down at the college, Gannon College. And it talks about salvation history. I never heard that. I'm going to go take that class. I did, and oh my goodness, I was just astounded because everything I learned I never knew, about the doctrine and where did that come from, and it just got to be so interesting that I continue to take classes because I learned about my religion, things I did not know. I learned about the history, about, the history of the church, a lot about the Bible. The Catholics didn't really study the Bible the way the Protestants did, until recently they do, but, and so, there was a lot about the Old Testament in these classes. It just got very, very interesting. And so I ended up teaching, maybe you know that, I don't know. I ended up teaching, religion classes to kids that went to public school. It just was in me. And you grow to a maturity in your faith. You kind of like this and yeah. But then at some point, it becomes basic for you. And I would say as a mature Catholic, I can look at any religion and I can respect it. And I can respect the people who honor God or, the Hindus or whatever. Although I believe that Jesus Christ is the true church. It comes from Judaism. It's the same God. But it doesn't upset me that somebody else believes something else. And I can respect that, and I do. And I'm fine with it, even the Muslims or whatever. So, but I am very, very settled in what I believe. And it really has influenced my life. It really has.
Have you noticed any evolution in the traditions that you used to celebrate versus how you celebrate them now? Could be Irish, could be Catholic, any of the above.
Yeah. Well, there's less Irish in where we live. We don't live in Boston anymore. Yeah. But I noticed they still celebrate St. Patrick's Day no matter where you are in the country. And even if you're not Catholic, they celebrate it. And that's good. Yes, the churches on Sunday used to be packed, every single Mass. And, they had a wonderful choir and everything. Today, there are a lot of Catholics who don't go to church every Sunday. And what contributed to that, of course, was the COVID, when the churches were not allowed to bring masses of people in.
Yeah.
And so people got used to that. When I was in school, all the way through school, not in high school, but all the way through, every single day we'd start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
We'd always have the Pledge of Allegiance. And at Christmas time, of course, Christmas was celebrated. And I don't know if all the teachers, but some of the teachers I had used to read the story of the Christ child being born. This was in class, before we started school. And just because it would be Christmas week or something.
So as you've gotten older, what are some of the things that you've done to remain heavily involved with your faith?
To remain
Heavily involved with your faith.
Well, as I became older, I I got a master's degree in religious education, and I taught religion for many years. I started teaching when my kids were little, and then as we moved to different places, I get involved. So I've been teaching here too. I'm not teaching now, but I taught. And then I was also a Eucharistic minister. There are lay people who, like me, can deliver Holy Communion to people who are so-called shut-ins. And I was one of those for a long time. We have to train for that, we get all the training and everything. And, the church knows your background. I mean, you have to be a practicing Catholic in order to do that.
Yeah.
And you have to follow the rules and so of treating the host, sacramentally and all that. And so I would go to nursing homes and bring Holy Communion to a person that couldn't get out and go to church. And that was very gratifying for me, I got some good friends, you get friendly with them. It's not only, we talk about religion and Holy Communion and everything, but you talk to them about their life and everything, and it's kind of a bright spot for those people.
Sure.
So, and of course, I contribute to the church. Yeah. I don't know if you knew or not, Holy Family Church was enlarging itself. They put a big addition on there, and decided they were going to put a large statue of Saint Gabriel at the top of the church. And Saint Gabriel is the one that came to the Blessed Virgin Mary, and they called it the Annunciation. He announced to her that she's going to be the Mother of God. That's Saint Gabriel. Anyway, when the church was being enlarged, the pastor was asking, for people to contribute to certain things that they were going to have to install, like a new tabernacle and a new this, that. So, my daughters and sons said, Dad would like it if we could, pay for one of the Blessed Virgin statues or something, because he was devoted, and we could just say, in honor of Leo Lynch. But when I went over and talked to the pastor, he said there weren't any they had a Blessed Virgin Mary out in the outdoors in where they had a little shrine, but he said someone already paid for that. So the only thing was, he said, this St. Gabriel, sculpture that's going to go on the top of the church. And I said, well, St. Gabriel is the one that announced to Mary, so maybe that would be okay. So the family agreed with me, and we all agreed. Because the family also, they honor the Blessed Virgin. I don't know about the boys, they're not, they probably do, but kind of quietly, So anyway, we dedicated that statue in loving memory of Leo A. Lynch. Did you know that?
Did not.
Yeah. So if you go over there, at first they said, I called up because it occurred to me they were going to install that. And I said to the secretary, you know what? If this is going to be a big deal, I do not want my name out there. I didn't want, this was, so anyway, they kept it anonymous. But there is a little sign inside. They have a room there called the Gabriel Room. It's one they added on, So that was another thing. That's, yeah. It makes me feel good,
For sure. Before I kind of wrap up the last question or two, I know you took some notes. If you would want to explain something, if you want to get something out there, I guess now is the time to do that.
Well, the thing is, when I was a little girl, World War II broke out, and everything was different. I was about 10 when Pearl Harbor was bombed, but the cities, all the cities, but my city in particular, would have air raids where all of a sudden, all the sirens would be going off. And this would be at night, not early night. And what was required was everybody had to pull their shades down, turn off their lights as best they could. They didn't want any light showing in the windows at all. And all the street lights were out. Everything would go dark. And the air raid wardens would come around. It'd be a guy with a hard hat and a flashlight, just checking everything and making sure. And I found out later, Leo, my husband, he said when he was an air raid warden. He was a young kid, probably like you. Yeah. I didn't know him at the time. But anyway, that was, it was scary and it wasn't, But the headlights had to be painted black on the top, on the automobiles, so that only half of it showed, in order to keep it down. Times Square, was always the best and the most. Signs, lights, everything at Times Square. All that got shut down. You couldn't go and visit the Statue of Liberty. That was all shut down. I had one of my aunts and my cousins lived in New York City. So as kids, we took turns going to visit New York City, have a little time in New York City to see, Statue of Liberty and Coney Island and all that. But when my sister Jerry's turn came up, it was during that time and she didn't get to see any of that. Wow. But when I went the next year, I could go up I went right up to the crown of the Liberty, New York City was the big deal. I mean, Rockefeller Center and all that. It was just... So, let's see, when we were at war, everyone and everything was focused on being patriotic. You go... I mean, every song that came in was a song about the war, over there, over there. we'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there. People used to sing that, and then it was like, I'll be home for Christmas, but only in my dreams, soldiers singing. Another one, I'll be seeing you, at some time when you get home. Something else, don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home. All of those songs were wonderful songs. They were, there was nothing new that wasn't, they had a song for the Air Force, Off We Go into the Wild Blue Yonder. They had a song for the Army, You're in the Army, Mr. Brown, no more telephones, la la la. Oh, no more breakfast in bed, it was good. They had Anchors Away for the Navy, and the Marines. Off we go. Well, anyway, they had, and people sang it, they sang God Bless America all the time. All the movies were about the war and how the Americans won, They did all the Japs and they'd win the war and all that. One thing that was very significant, I think, almost every single home, with very few exceptions, had a little flag like this in their window. And it would have either a dark blue star or maybe two dark blue stars, and that meant there were two members of the family who were in the active war. If it had a gold star, that meant somebody was killed in the war. Almost every house had flags in there, and you walk by and you could see, if someone died or if they still had soldiers. And there were big signs and posters all around. There was a big one that even today you see it once in a while. Uncle Sam wants you. Have you ever seen that? He's like this. There were a bunch of sayings. One that I remember, it said, loose lips sink ships. So they were telling everybody, if you know anything, about anything, don't say it. If you're, like, say your son told you something about over in the war, loose lips sink ships. Because there was a lot of, what was I going to say? Propaganda and everything.
Yeah.
We had rationing, where we had green stamps, and depending on what your household was, you had so many green stamps every month, and you could only spend so many green stamps on sugar, meat, food in general.
Yeah.
We didn't have butter anymore. They said you could buy margarine, and margarine was like lard. It was white, and there was a little thing like this with heavy yellow, and what you did was you put the yellow in and mixed it around to make it look like butter. Bread was 10 cents. Cigarettes were 12 cents a pack. Hamburger was 25 cents a pound. That's how it was. Anyway, when the war ended, everybody in the whole country went wild, just wild. The sailors came home and they were kissing everybody, There's a picture that goes on in New York City in Times Square. The sailor's got a nurse and he's kissing her like this. He didn't even know her, I think that was about it. I mean, there was no gas, very little gasoline for any cars. You couldn't buy new tires. Everything was going for free. And my mother, for the first time, and women, for the first time, came out of the house and they worked in the mills. My mother worked in a Remington Arms and making bullets. So that's about it.
All right, well, I'll leave you off with this last question. If there's something that you hope the younger generations of this family continue to pass on, what would that be? And that could be anything.
Well, it would be the Catholic faith. And it would be, I am a little sad that I didn't save all my pictures and things. I wish I had a huge album full of pictures of my relatives and little notations of where this was and what took place. It would be nice, I think, for the generation to know more about their grandparents than we did. But I'm afraid I didn't do a good job on that. My sister-in-law, Mary Lynch, Leo's sister Mary, and he had a sister Dorothy and a sister Joan. He had 3 sisters, and he was the only boy. But Mary never got married, but she was very organized, and she made a huge album about everything that she did. She worked at Harvard University. She was number 2 there after the dean or whatever. She had a very important job. But she was very low-key. She was never a braggadocio at all, she's lovely. But, of course, she never got married, she didn't have any children. Anyway, yeah, I wish that they would have more information about the background of our family, Leo's family, your dad's family, everything, That's the only thing I wish. We had a lot of artistic in my family. I don't know if I told you I had 3 sisters, but then I had 2 little brothers.
Yeah.
It came later. One of them is Uncle Jimmy, who's the artist, and Uncle Bill. And Bill also is an artist, not professionally like Jimmy is, but he's a magnanimous man. I mean, can do anything. So I like the idea that there's art somewhere in the family. Megan used to draw and paint, and Mary Therese did too. But of course, they get into school, there are too many things going on, and they might pick it up later, but that's the main thing. And I mean, of course, when I say the Catholic faith, I mean, the moralistic ends of it, choosing right from wrong and all that,
Well, thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome. I hope I didn't
do this, for sure.
blow your mind with everything. I don't think I missed anything.